When we think about mass adoption for crypto, we don't typically talk about the flashy things that comes along with crypto. Like for an example, DeFi and, tapping into yield generation, liquidity pools and things like that. We think about user-facing apps. And I just mentioned this actually in a video from yesterday where I was talking about, gaming and also sports, because these are two great avenues to hundreds of millions of new users to crypto. And I do think that that's a prime area for mass adoption to be achieved. And what if I told you that Hedera seems to be on a path to achieving mass adoption? Well, in this video, I'm actually going to be addressing it. So welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. So over the last couple of days, obviously the market has been heating up and HBAR is not shy to this. Now you might say, well, HBAR is not breaking over 20 cents, so it's not really doing much. Well, in the last 7 days, it's up still about almost 16%. And in the last 1 year, we're still up about 50% or so. If you're going off the lows, well, we're still up very, very well. From 4 cents to 18 cents, I'll take that any day of the week. And a lot of altcoins are actually still up significantly over the last couple months, since going back to about roughly the beginning of November. And I love to see that. And a lot of those are actually, utility-based projects. And if we even compare, HBAR to some of these top projects like Solana, HBAR has outperformed Solana. Okay. On top of Solana, we've actually outperformed Ethereum as well. We have outperformed a lot of the top 100. And this is where I think that a lot of people are kind of getting confused, because they want higher and higher price action. And we will get that. But I think that we should also take a second to step back and realize that we have already won big. The next, move in this market will be much higher. I do believe that we hit all-time highs. I do believe that we go to $1 plus on HBAR. But I want you guys to also understand that Hedera has been, very successful already this cycle. But outside of that, let's talk about a few things happening around Hedera. That's also pretty exciting. Number one, BitGo. So BitGo recently just announced that they are supporting a ton of new digital assets onto the platform for trading, and HBAR was one of them. I love to see this because BitGo is a massive giant in the space. It might not seem like they're a huge player because they only have 63,000 followers, but this is a very significant institutional based infrastructure platform that has a lot of big names tied to it. So I'm very excited about this. I think that this is great. And again, it's just another avenue for retail and institutional players to tap in and buy HBAR and get some more exposure to it. So love to see it. Think that it's great, and very happy about it. Now, next up, we also have Bonzo Finance. So like I said in yesterday's video, DeFi is becoming very successful on Hedera. I think that it only continues to grow, and Bonzo Finance continues to innovate and continues to build. We have liquidation bots on Hedera revolutionizing DeFi market efficiencies and profit potential. Hedera's unique architecture with fixed fees, fair transaction ordering, and MEV resistance unlocks major advantages for liquidation bot operators and protocol health. I think that this is great in terms of really kind of putting a spotlight on just how efficient Hedera is around DeFi. We know that there's been so many great moves happening already around this ecosystem, from Kabila to Bonzo. There's been so many great moves being made. And I do think that it's only going to continue. The DeFi 2.0 push from Hedera really has been very successful already. I know that we don't think it has been because of how, down the market actually is. But just remember this. Right now, if we think about the DeFi market, let's go to the categories real quick, and let's go to the DeFi market itself. The DeFi market itself is at about $104 billion. I remember when this market was worth over $250 billion. This is down 32, almost 33% in the last day in terms of the DeFi crypto market cap. We're sitting at about roughly $65 billion in total. But this doesn't include Ethereum as well, which I do think that it should because it has over 1,000 plus protocols tied to it. But HBAR is the third largest DeFi project by market cap on this list. And that's because of how much Hedera has really kind of done over the last couple months around the DeFi space. DeFi on Hedera has been growing rapidly since about the end of 2022. I do think that, if we're really kind of thinking about it, It's coming up on about 3 years since DeFi got introduced to the Hedera ecosystem. I think that they've been absolutely killing it and doing a very good job. And it only, continues to grow and expand through these names, like, for an example, Bonzo. But on top of that, we also just got a big update from Hashgraph, which is, 2 major milestones that got reached today around Web3 cybersecurity. So ISO 27001 certification, the gold standard for InfoSec, and then CISA Secure by Design pledge, aligning with global leaders on proactive security. When we think about how secure Hedera already is, we've talked about it. The ABFT, security measurements that they already have in place is huge. But this just continues to show us that Hedera levels up every single day. I mean, the work that's being put in around Hedera is so exciting to see. I really do want you guys to understand that Hedera is becoming the home, not just for retail, but for enterprise and institutional players. And these major moves here are proof of that. But let's get into the real juiciness, right? The mass adoption of Hedera. I hope that YouTube doesn't mute this, because this was from a podcast from the Sporting Crypto channel. I hope that YouTube doesn't mute this simply because of the music in the background, but we do have CEO Charles Atkins sits down with Sporting Crypto to discuss the future of on-chain sports and entertainment. Check it out.
And I think the people that made the most money during the NFT craze was actually the lawyers. Nobody quite understood who could use the content, who should be using the content. Crypto and sports particular, that was kind of like the Napster moment. Most athletic clubs, they're fully aware 99% of their fan base doesn't ever enter the stadium. So how do you have a unified ID where they can log in, watch a match, and actually get credited for that match? Teams and leagues are a lot more open to having the conversation, where previously they just didn't even want to talk about it. There's two very distinct kind of conversations. Someone will call and they'll say, here's our Web3 plan. And it is like very well baked out. And so when those conversations and those people call, it's very interesting because they're so intelligent about the space. And then there's, the other side of that, which is a total opposite end of the spectrum. It's, hey, we've got this position on the F1 car. We've got this position on the stadium. And then you ask them, how are you implementing the technology? I don't know. I just need to fill this slot. I think long-term vision, the one that's the hardest to do, it's kind of the holy grail of sporting, is.
Now, I do think that this is something to really kind of focus on, because I love that he's talking about the integration of the tech, because a lot of these sporting, giants, all they care about is, well, we need to fill a slot, for a sponsor, and we just figured this would be the best, way to do it. Like, for an example, the UFC, right? We know that the UFC has a partnership with VeChain, and up until this point, all it really was just a logo on in the cage, right? But now we see here that UFC president Dana White joins VeChain as an official advisor. The president of the UFC and founder of PowerSlap has officially joined VeChain official as an advisor to support its growing ecosystem of real-world blockchain applications, with a focus on the VBetter DAO sustainability platform. Now, again, this isn't, a big announcement of them adopting any of the tech or utilizing the tech, but I do think that eventually we will start to see that. Now, you might be wondering, well, how so? How will they do this? Well, I'll get to that here in a second, but I just want you guys to understand that the mass adoption of this space will happen through initiatives like this. Like the UFC, for an example, is a massive sporting event, all right? They have crazy viewership. We actually look at this announcement. This is a full breakdown of some of the viewership behind it. We can actually see that not only has their pay-per-view cards been very successful, we could see that they have one of the fastest growing attractions around sports. And we can see some of the gates down here. So the average UFC event currently gets anywhere between 300,000 to 2 million views globally on pay-per-view buys. We're not even just talking about, UFC fans themselves, because we know that it's in the millions. Okay, now this is just one sport. If we're thinking about how to really achieve mass adoption, it's getting those numbers to actually utilize the tech. How can we do that? Well, it can be through many things, right? Karate Combat is doing something very significant, and I think that they're doing it in a very successful way. We got to remember that Karate Combat is, tied right back to Hedera. They utilize Hedera for the underlying app that they have created, which we'll talk about here in a second. But they have 1.8 million accounts created, 300 million combat sports fans globally, right? We know that there's massive amounts of fans out there, and we also have greater than 90K unique GameFi participants. Now, if we're thinking about what Karate Combat has, they have this Karate Combat app, and this is the bread and butter, right? This is where you could actually utilize the Karate token, which is settled and transacted on Hedera, and you could choose fighters. You could bet within the app. You could utilize the Karate tokens within the app, and this is how you really achieve mass adoption. It's something as simple as this, directly tied back to a phone, directly on an app. It's basically a Web 2 user interface so that anyone can really kind of utilize it. You don't need to learn anything new or anything like that. And even the web app, they have the web app as well. This is basically what it looks like. So you'll see the card and you can choose your fighter. Now you can connect your wallet. On the phone, it's a lot easier, but this is basically how it would look. The app itself, they do have a few breakdowns on the website, like I showed you, but this is exactly how it works. This is exactly what I want to see from some big players like the UFC. They already have a partnership with VeChain. I don't understand why it's just like a sponsorship. They should have something like this. I think if they started to do this, I know that the UFC was implementing NFTs around their events, but if they started to do something like this, I think that it would be huge. But also, we know that Karate Combat recently just announced back in October that they announced the UP blockchain. This is the first layer 2 on Hedera. And I think that this is where we start to see a much bigger shift from the Karate Combat side, where we start to see, mass adoption really being targeted. But it's not just Karate Combat that's doing this. Kabila just recently announced a huge move. So we have here, Hedera is the #1 chain for tokenizing sports leagues. Karate Combat kickstarted the narrative, and now multiple others are positioning themselves to follow in their footsteps. One of the first leagues to step into Web3 next is the Underground Bowling Association, with over 11,000 active players across 400 locations and multiple events every single day. The UBA is preparing to onboard a vibrant community to Hedera. To navigate the Web3 space effectively, the UBA has partnered with Import Hedera, and this is going to be happening on May 25th. So again, this is incredible to see. Again, it's not a massive name, obviously, but it is just another step in the right direction to achieve mass adoption. But also you have Mingo, right? Like, this is exactly what we want to see around even major events. Like, if we're thinking about sporting events, it doesn't have to be a Web3 facing app like this where you bet on fighters or anything like that. Mingo is also doing something very interesting, and that's a ticket, right? Buying a ticket to an event, it triggers multiple on-chain transactions, wallet creation, NFT minting, verification, and more. They are doing this all through a phone as well. Mingo has been around the Hedera scene for a while. I believe that they were announced back in 2021, late 2021, early 2022. But we could see that this is one ecosystem for digital assets, ticketing, gaming, and even NFTs. And we have the ecosystem here. This is the Mingo tickets. This is the thing that I'm mainly really kind of focused on, because I think that, tickets, doing the ticket side is so crucial to focus on. I really think that this is where we could start to see a whole new world open up. We know anyone out there that, purchased tickets to a concert or a sporting event, we all know how annoying and frustrating the whole process could be. With this, we actually see a full breakdown. So attendees get more than entry, authentic ownership, global secondary market, exclusive perks as well. We also have fraud-proof ticketing, resale price caps, and added revenue streams as well. This is very exciting because this could, like I said, revolutionize the entire event ticket side and achieve mass adoption in the simplest way possible. Everyone wants to buy tickets. This is the best way to do it. And again, you can start to see how mass adoption can be achieved through something as simple as just ticket purchasing. But then you also have platforms like Zoop, which are, really kind of giving creators much more power and a lot more monetary access. Most platforms treat fans and the community like walking wallets. At Zoop, you're a key player. Get rewarded for engagement, earn supporting creators you love, receive your fair share of the ad revenue. on Zoop, your participation finally pays off. And I think it's a 70-30 split from Zoop, but this is exactly what I want to see from the Web3 side. Like, if we're really going to keep our original, goal, which is, give more power to those by, decentralizing these platforms, this is exactly the way to do that, right? Now, they have up to 100% creator payouts, but I think that Zoop takes like 1%, which is not bad at all. It might be a little bit more, but we've talked a little bit about this. It's a great platform, and it kind of reminds me of Galaxy. Galaxy is also a great platform. So it's an 80% of ad revenue to creators and fans, so they take 20%. But it reminds me of Galaxy in a way, because Galaxy also created like a social media platform, which is a social wallet. They call it a social wallet because it has everything all in one. All of these platforms are launching on Hedera. Like, if we're thinking about what's going on here, okay, it's not just about sports. It's not just about gaming. It's about everything, every single step of the way. Even like Jam, right? Jam token with Tune FM, right? That's giving artists more revenue opportunities in a decentralized way, which can also lead to mass adoption, because all of a sudden you start to see people utilizing Tune FM because you have exclusive artists on there support it. Moving away from Spotify. This is billions of users. If we combine all of this, into one, the sports side, the ticketing side, and then even like, the music side, this is billions of users. Now, will this happen overnight? No, it's not going to happen overnight. But it's very clear that Hedera has their eyes set on one thing: mass adoption of the tech. Like, Hedera could easily have their name just thrown in, to like the Octagon in the UFC, or, on a huge stadium, and they could just pay out money for a sponsorship deal. But why would they do that? It doesn't benefit the Hedera ecosystem. They want to have a partnership in which the tech is actually utilized. That's how we get to mass adoption. We don't get to mass adoption by just throwing a name out there, getting a sticker, and calling it a day. Because that's just not the way it works. So I love to see this from Hedera. I think that this is going to be very successful. I think that Hedera will lead the mass adoption push. And I really do think that we will eventually get to mass adoption of this tech. This space grows year over year. It continues to get much, much larger over time. And I think that it's only a matter of time until we achieve mass adoption. And it's going to be through names like Hedera. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely leave a like, subscribe, to notifications on, because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.